Like to call to order Public Schools of Robeson County Policy Committee meeting December the 3rd, 2024, 9 a.m. The agenda, we will be discussing fall updates 2024 today. To begin with, I'd like to have a few moments of silence for invocation. Like to remember Mike Locklear, one of our maintenance workers, is understand something tragic happened with his wife. Let's remember them, if you will. At this time, let's have a few moments of silence. Thank you. At this time, we'll start with policy 1310, 4002. Mr. Bobby, is there anything that you see that we need to discuss in depth, in detail in this policy, or any attender or participant?
Mr. Chair, if I may, we do have Ms. Brendan Thompson with us, who heads up our parental engagement, and you want to update us on changes with that?
Good morning. So, Mr. Bobby, you'll have to help me out. From what I can tell, the changes with policy code 1310, section C2A, speaks of the updates that was made in the Parents Guide for Student Achievement, just making sure that we have the shot record information added into that Parents Guide.
That's correct.
Okay, that was the first change that I saw. Okay.
Okay.
And then moving on past that, to section 3, the additional annual notification speaks to the career development plan, making sure that parents are notified once it's created and how to access that plan. And that information has also been updated in the Parents Guide for Student Achievement.
Yes, and that career development plan is also required by general statute as well. So that is the reason for the inclusion here.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, on the career development plans, Dr. Dallas, can you speak to that? We've started that process. There is a promotion and graduation requirement tied to that plan. Can you speak to that, Dr. Dallas?
That in relation to the high school.
That is addressed in a later policy, but beginning this year, all students who are in 8th grade are required to have a career development plan in place in order to be promoted. All students do need to have one by the time they graduate. So we are working with CTE, with Mr. Herman, and looking at having a school-based team for each school to work through with their English teachers, to work through creating a career development plan for all 8th graders starting this year. A plan was shared with principals at our last principal meeting, as well as with the board at our last board meeting.
And so parents will be involved, have been involved in the development of that plan. It does not lock a student into a particular career choice. It's just information to help them make and to, as you mentioned, help guide in terms of course selection based on that.
In 8th grade, it's a lot of having them explore the different opportunities, trying to take an assessment to start matching their interests with actual career choices, so that they can begin planning for their path to hopefully pursue the career of their dreams.
Is this an activity that's taking place 2 times a year, the beginning of the year and the end of the year? Or
The career development plan will actually be something that they look at throughout the year. It's not supposed to be like a one-time event each year. It's something that the students will work towards. They'll be able to add evidences to it, like a resume. They'll be able to research things and add to it. So the idea of the plan is actually they'll have like a portfolio that they will have completed, but the plan itself will just be a document. but it should not be a one-stop time. It should be something that we use throughout 8th through 12th grade.
Okay.
I would add that Ms. Freeman and Brendan have been very intentional in our family engagement nights, that we are exploring possible careers with family engagement. You want to talk about that? Because that's been our intent.
Yes, sir. And also, Dr. Williamson, that's actually a part of our exit survey. At the end of the night, we always ask parents and families, any of the caring adults, what's something else that they would need to see, they would like to see or focus on at any of our events. And so the top, or I guess the most frequent takers have been career development and as well as STEM. So this would be a great way to introduce that to parents, but also where parents can feel like they are in partners with the children when they create their career development plan. So it's all good.
Thank you. Anybody have any other questions or comments? I hear a motion that we accept policy changes for 1310, 4002, or decline. Have a motion and a second to accept policy 1310, 4002, change recommendations. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Those opposed, ayes have it. We'll move on to policy 2302, remote participation in board meetings. Looks like, Mr. Bobby, we have some things taken out. Was this because of the COVID?
The changes required in this policy are based on a recent law case or recent case that was just adjudicated. And basically the changes in here say that the only way board member can participate officially and vote would be in a remote setting, would be if there's a state declared emergency. Other than that, they would just basically attend remotely is the gist of this policy.
So does that mean if a board member on a scheduled board meeting is not here, that individual cannot vote unless it's declared state emergency?
Yes, that's the way this policy is written.
Okay, we probably need to make that clear, Dr. Williamson, to all our next board meeting. And that's a substantial change. It could make a difference.
And Mr. Chair, I'm not sure, we probably need further interpretation of that because the policy makes reference to up to 3 times. And I think that's when you actually,
Okay.
and it provides that list of things. The quarantine certainly is one, but let us get
Okay.
some further
So
interpretation.
you'll have Mr.
Yes.
Schwartz to
Yes.
look at that for us.
Yes, yes.
Any other discussion on remote participation in board meetings? Mr. Craig?
Oh,
Should be on.
Okay. Mr. Bobby, when I read that, that's what I thought too. And then I went to looking and seeing, like the page I referenced, it says if you use video technology, the participant must be visible, which we hadn't been doing. And then it also made a comment that all votes taken, you couldn't do a raise of the hand. You had to be voice votes on anything taken. And then it put that 3 meeting thing in there that you could miss up to 3 meetings. And then I think this would be some questions. So I was a little unclear on it after reading through here. could you participate if you were remote? So, myself, I was a little unclear.
Right. College policy makes it clear, and we have been practicing that the board chair has to declare who is remote. You have to make that public announcement, and then that officially lets them into the meeting. But again, we can get further clarification.
Thank you. Also, I failed to ask, do we have anybody remotely involved in this meeting? I know the committee consists of Ms. Melissa Oceans, Mr. Craig, Mr. Terry, and Mr. Brad. And I visibly see 2 members present. Okay, for the record, then I just want to make sure that we understand who's participating today. Now, I understand some had other obligations to meet today. Any other questions or comments on remote participation in board meetings? I hear a motion to accept or decline
So-
recommended changes.
So for the board meeting next week, just provide additional clarity to this and
Yes.
present that to the board.
Please.
Yes.
A motion to accept or decline recommended changes.
I make a motion to accept the recommended changes based on what Mr. Bobby gives us.
Have a motion and a second. Those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. Next, policy review is technology responsible use. Looks like our policy pretty much states that our school system is responsible for all participation in our communication of technology equipment.
Mr. Chair, if I may, let me ask Lisa, if you come and talk to us about training of our students, that's an emphasis in terms of acceptable use of technology.
So we use, for acceptable use of technology, it talks about digital literacy across all platforms, all anything. So our students have Chromebooks, our younger ones have iPads. And when they log into learning.com is one of the features that we use for digital literacy. It covers the how to, I call it netiquette. It's just etiquette on how you utilize the device, how you hold yourself accountable when you're online, whether that's in a Google document or Microsoft Word document or even a website. And they go through different lessons. Age appropriate, K2 is going to be a little different than 3.5 and 6.8 and 9.12. But the acceptable use the acceptable use documentation that is also provided, the students utilize learning.com for digital literacy and understanding what's expected of them as a student. But then it also, paperwork or digital paperwork is brought to the parent, sent home and brought to the parent so that they can sign off on those documentations as well.
Do we have anything that overlaps for parents and as far as their involvement with the student, especially our grammar grades, as far as using their tablets or whatever?
Can you clarify that a little bit more in detail,
I'm
what you're
asking-
asking?
At some level, parents are probably going to have to be involved, some more than others. So is there anything?
For the parent?
Yes.
So back in COVID, we had different Google, Canvas courses publicly for parents, but also they've not gone dead either. So they're still open and available for parents to be able, or grandparents or guardians to be able to get knowledge or a knowledge base of the different technologies that the students will either bring home or based on the school site decision that whether devices go home or stay at the school.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on technology? Okay, Mr. Phillips.
At what age are iPads versus Chromebooks? Here we go. At what age are Chromebooks and iPads going home?
So I can give you the what age groups or grade levels and grade spans
Yeah.
based on devices. So your K2 are iPads, and it's a school-based decision of whether or not those devices go home or they stay at the school site. But we are one-to-one, and every student that we have has the capability of having that device, okay? 2 through 13. So let me back that up. Kindergarten and first grade have iPads. Second grade to 13, our early college all the way up to our early college students have Chromebooks. And then based on the school site decision, whether they're able to take them home or not. Our high schoolers are very avid about taking more Chromebooks home back and forth because they do work, I say 24/7, but you get that
Yeah.
based on what they're doing. Your K1, they really stay in the classroom. And like I said, media coordinators check them out, bring them back in kind of deal. But in order to have a device, your parent, guardian has to sign off on the technology responsible use form.
At especially the younger ages, if they're going home, do we have any that ever goes missing?
We do.
Are we holding those people responsible?
So
Or what's
I'll
the-
refer to Mr. Bobby.
So currently, parents are not held responsible, or students are held responsible financially if a device is lost or broken. So after so many times, I think after 2 times, 3 times, then that student becomes a day user and is no longer allowed to take that device home.
And
Mr. Craig.
let me ask, from what I'm hearing at the grades that they can take them home, a lot less of our schools are carrying them home now than they did. Is that true? Most of them are staying on campus.
That would be correct. That's correct. That's what I'm hearing as well.
That's what I'm hearing as far as talking to
That's
principals or teachers, that they keep them in the classroom. They don't send them as many home as they did when we first started this.
Is there still a stipulation, Mr. Bobby, as far as making sure all things are paid for that were damaged before graduation?
Current with technology, there are no fees assessed to damages for technology.
That's an area that we've had some beginning conversations around, but we're at the point that we're going to be forced to assess a fee for repairs because a lot of it's happening in school and classes. And I can get you a dollar amount of what we're spending yearly, but it is just incredible. We're going to be forced to assess that to student and parents.
I think that would be something interesting for the board to know or be aware of. Dr. Williamson, their next board meeting. Any more comments or questions concerning technology responsibility? I hear a motion to accept or decline.
Make a motion to accept this policy.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
All right.
Those opposed, ayes have it. We'll move on to policy 3227, 7322, web page development. I understand at the present time, web page development's mostly through our technology group. Is that correct?
Your digital teaching and learning technology coaches at the school sites handle the web page and the web content that is public.
Okay, who monitors the original base content of a web page
At the district level or overall?
at district?
That would be Cole Wilkins.
Good morning. So at the district level, myself oversees web content along with Jessica Seeley, our public information officer, to try to make sure that everything stays up to date and current and fix any issues that arise. I would, as Lisa mentioned, our DTL coaches, digital teaching learning coaches, they are the site contact that's responsible for that school website. Ultimately, the principal is responsible for their school website, but the policy stipulates that they can designate a designee. And of course, that digital teaching learning coach is that designee. Some of them are media coordinators, majority of them are not. I can tell you the media coordinator is usually a backup, that if the DTL coach is not available, then the media coordinator is a backup facilitator that can help maintain and post content and information to those web pages. But this policy specifically talks about American Disabilities Act. And as the federal government updates that law, of course, we have to stay compliant with that law. So that's really what this is talking about, is just maintaining compliance with the law and staying compliant.
That was going to be my next question concerning the legalities. Make sure that we are staying. Looks like this policy also has a lot of legal references. Like you stated, American with Disabilities Act and Rehabilitation Act. Any other comments or concerns with web page development policy? Hear a recommendation or denial for suggested changes?
I'll make a motion to accept policy as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All of those in favor, let me know by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Ayes have it. Testing and Assessment Program, Policy 3410. Like we have in section high school end of course testing, we have some suggested changes. English learner students following the course of study pathway.
Chair, we do have our testing coordinator, Ms. Lewis, is with us. Do you want to address anything to the committee, please?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I think the one thing that I want to address is we've added in our policy that our IEPs would also be exempt from particular EOCs or scores, test scores. And I just wanted to, for you to understand that those are typically our medical exemptions, when they would be sick and we would get a medical exemption for those. Another item that I would like to address is the last part of this where it talks about being exempt because of test scores not being in. And currently this year, science will not be in. And in past years, what we have always used is first 9 weeks plus second 9 weeks divided by 2 and use the average for the final exam.
When you say not going to be in, what, can you clarify what that means?
The scores will not be in from the state because it is a new test. So
Okay.
they have to process those scores and recalculate them, renorm them.
Okay. Is there anything in this policy that you see that we need to pay attention to or discuss?
There is one item that I would like discussed, and that is the last 5 days for final exams. The statement reads, let me find the statement real quick. It's a little vague. I got to put my glasses on to do this. I believe the statement reads that the exams have to or cannot last more than 5 days. And I would recommend, if we are going to use the 5 days for exams, we use it for all tests, teacher made as well as our EOCs.
So you should, saying that should pertain to all exams?
Yes, sir.
And we can do that as a practice rather than amend this policy. Just need to have that conversation with high school principals. Now, that's a practice. Teacher made aligns with the state made assessment 5 days.
Good recommendation. So that could be handled through Dr. Williamson.
Yes,
and,
sir. That's how
staff.
we've handled it. I just wanted to bring it to your attention that it
Okay.
was.
We appreciate your input. Anyone else? Any comments, concerns? I hear a motion to accept or decline recommended changes.
I make a motion to accept policy 3410.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
All right.
Aye. Those opposed? Policy 3410 passed as recommended. Student promotion and accountability, policy 3420. Looks like some added recommendations around 8th grade career development plan. A high school student who does not already have a career development plan must complete the plan within 90 days of enrollment in the school. And we just presently discussed the policy.
Right. Mr. Chair, if I can, Dr. Dallas is prepared to walk through the changes on this, please, sir.
Good morning again. As mentioned earlier, the major change to this policy does involve the requirement for a career development plan. So starting this year, if any 8th grader who would not have a career development plan according to policy would have to be retained. However, we are making sure that all of our 8th grade students will have a career development plan in place, so that does not have to be something we need to do. That also triggers again in 10th grade that they need to have a revised plan by the end of 10th grade. And that same provision would happen if for some reason they don't have a revised career development plan. This policy would say that we should retain the student. But we've put in a mechanism and processes that we will make sure that we do not have students that fall under that and do not have a revised plan. So that's really the major addition to this policy is the career development plan requirement for 8th and 10th grade promotion.
I think that's awesome recommendation. Is that something, Dr. Williamson, did be conveyed to staff members? That everybody understands there's a policy now in place for 8th graders and 10th graders to have IEP in place?
That's correct. We've had that conversation. We consider ourselves really ahead of the curve on this. Talk about the program that we use.
Right. So we would say that we're ahead of the curve because we've been using a program called Major Clarity, which is something that students have been utilizing to assess their career interests, starting to kind of accumulate any kind of career documentation, like we said, maybe a resume, things like that. So our students have been accustomed to doing that. So this is really just kind of like stamping the official plan that's in place according to the policy. So at our last principal meeting, I believe it was in November, we did share the process that we would be utilizing to ensure that the career development plans are done in a timely manner, to make sure that any student who comes in that might be coming in from a different state, perhaps a different district that might not have had one, that they have a career development plan completed within 90 days. So in 8th grade, it's our social studies teachers. In the high school, we work with our English teachers to assure that, along with our counselors and CTE.
That 90 days, that state.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, also, if we may, on page 6 of 8, on the L from demotion, can we take a look at that? We understand that by statute, by law, principal's grade and place and promotion is tied to them. We do want to clarify, public schools of Robeson County, that once a student has been promoted by that principal, demotion cannot happen. So I'm going to put that out according to our policy.
Now, when you say demotion,
Right.
is this in reference to being able to graduate?
In some cases, we have parents that have come back to us once the student has been promoted and would say to us, I want my student placed back, which is a demotion, and that cannot happen. Those conversations happen prior to promotion taking place. Once a principal again promotes a student, it is final.
Is that applied to EC program also?
Yes, whoever
All
would
students.
take student period, yes.
Okay. Any other recommendations or questions concerning policy 3420? Hear a motion to decline or accept policy 3420?
I make a motion to accept policy 3420 as presented.
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? 3420 passed. Graduation requirements.
Chair, again, let me ask Dr. Dallas if she'll walk us through any changes on this policy.
So the main changes regarding this policy deal with the time frame of when a ninth grader would have entered ninth grade. So if you look on page 2 of, I guess it's 2 of 12, number 1, when we talk about ninth graders who entered for the first time, entered ninth grade before 2021, we really would not have very many of those, right? Because our current seniors would have entered in 21, 22. But we might have some situations, right? So really the main difference occurs on page 4 of 5, when they update the policy to expand that window, which would really capture most of the students that we have right now, ninth graders entering between 21, 22, which is where most of our seniors are sitting right now, and after in 25, 26. So if you look, it does outline more in the math area, what's required to be to meet your criteria and your credits to graduate. When we look at our math, they do have to pass math 1 and 2, plus 2 additional math courses. And there is a math option document that the state does share that we have that students can select from. Once again, additional changes on page 5, which will allow this policy to continue to move forward for ninth graders who are entering the first time in 26, 27. So that will give us a couple of years. Same criteria. They've outlined the requirements by subject area, how many credits are needed, what courses are required, the state required credits, and then our local credits. And then on page 6 and 7 deals with our occupational course of study, which are a lot of our students who perhaps matriculated through an EC pathway, perhaps, and then ended in an OCS program in high school. But it does basically talk through their required credits and what they need to have in order to graduate. Okay.
Do we have a placement plan that a student can test out?
Tell me where test out of.
Say Math 2, whatever Math 2 is.
Mhm.
If a student says, I pretty much understand and know Math 2, and their grade level is not high enough, can they take an exam or placement exam for
It's-
that?
It would not be kind of a solo situation. They do have what's called credit by mastery, where a student could actually take a certain level of test to say that they have met the minimum grade level requirements for that course. We do not use that too often, Mr. Brewer, but that is an opportunity that our students do have, is to basically talk to their counselor and principal about that credit by mastery, and they can actually document and demonstrate that they can perform all of the skills and objectives that would be in that course.
And Mr. Chair, that is a state board policy.
Yes,
So the state board determines the criteria, the assessment,
right.
and if they're going to award the credit. That's not something locally that we do.
Okay. So if we have a student that say, mid-military, came from Hawaii or somewhere, another state, is this same, placement given, or is it?
Yes, they can request that by way of that
Okay.
state board policy.
But our counselors really do a good job working with our students, especially military, to try to match up those courses that they might have had in a different state to make sure that they're not penalized any courses.
Any other comments?
I got a question.
Mr. Craig?
Dr. Dallas, we could go to any page. I'll take page 4. I think you mentioned that one. On the science part, when it says you can take a physical science course, and which I'm gonna say, if it's not changed, 9th grade physical science,
Mhm.
and you can take biology, and then it says earth or environmental science. Now, do you have to take that earth environmental science, or
Yeah, those are the three
those
required.
3? You have to take those 3.
Mhm.
So then chemistry or physics.
Now,
would be-
Bobby's, correct me if I'm wrong, they have to take those 3
Right.
as outlined, yes.
So a physical science could be physical science, chemistry, or
Could be
physics.
that.
Yeah.
But typically a kid would take physical science prior to taking
Right.
chemistry.
So if you take physical science and biology, you still have to get that earth environment.
Right.
And then the
Yes.
chemistry or physics would be in
It
addition.
would be in addition to.
Right.
And my other question, I don't know, it seemed like I seen somewhere in here that a high school student has to have an hour of physical education a week.
That,
That's-
that is in the wellness policy.
Right.
It's wellness. So
Yeah.
that's, okay,
So it's not in
I'll ask it then.
And I think that's going into effect next
Yes.
year, I believe. Yeah.
But I would like to add for just as an update on page 5, there are 2 major concerns here. And I know Dr. Dallas and Dr. Carr and her committee have worked on those. One of those is the addition of an arts credit
Mhm.
for grades 6 through 12 beginning next school year. That is on page 5. And it looks like a little plus with a minus underneath it, about the top portion of the page. Also in number 4, beginning in the 26-27, and curriculum has also worked on this as well, the addition of a computer science class as a graduation requirement.
Right. And I believe at our last board meeting, we did talk about the art in the endorsement. We did share that with our principals as well as how to ensure that that does happen, that all of our students do have that art credit before graduation.
Good point.
And our concern around that, when the state board approves those items, it means that students have one less option
Right.
in terms of an elective. And that's what happens. And what we're pursuing is as many certifications and credentials as possible, which really means for CTE, that's normally a level 2 class. So really it can hinder that. But one less elective option is what happens when you make it a core, because that's what you really done. When you say you have to take the art, it became a core. Computer science has become a core
Right.
requirement for graduation.
How do you think that's going to affect us in our LEA?
Normally, if it's going to show up again, it would show up that a student would not be able to get an additional certification. It is our desire that kids can graduate from high school, especially with the new career center. They can graduate with multiple certifications and multiple credentials in place. It's going to have a negative impact on that because, again, it takes a level 2 to get that credential certification. So that's where it would hurt us. Our hope was that we could accomplish that at the middle school level, but they clearly defined that is not the case because we offer computer science at the middle school. In the original conversation, that was going to be acceptable, but something happened and minds changed, and so they made it a core requirement for high schools.
How does that affect our early college students, or does it?
It does not.
Okay.
Right.
Mr. Craig, Mr. Phillips, any questions or concerns? I know,
Mine is-
normally the graduation requirements is normally a huge discussion at the end of the year.
Mine is not nice. They sometimes need to let the systems some more input with these graduation things instead of just saying, this is what you do.
Mm.
Mr. Phillips?
I'm good.
Okay. Do you hear a motion to accept or decline recommended changes for graduation requirements?
I make a motion to accept 3460 policy.
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Ayes have it. Tobacco products, policy 4320. We have anybody here to speak on that topic?
And so with this one, Mr. Chair, so the update in this one is just to align the language of tobacco products with general statute. There's no substantial change to the policy other than just, again, defining based upon general statute what a tobacco product is.
And again, our campuses, buildings are tobacco-free.
I would assume that takes care of marijuana too.
Yes.
I make a motion, we accept 4320.
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? 4320 recommended changes passed. Bullying, harassing behavior prohibited. I'm hearing a lot about this lately. What recommended changes do we have from the state on this policy? It looks like
Mr. Chair, it's on page 5 of 6. And the changes in this one adds the language site supervisor, just in case bullying or harassing behavior does not occur on a school campus. So it was originally defined as the principal or their designee, but now it is added the language of site supervisor. And that is on page 5 of 6.
This is a tough area because I've noticed some instances that I've heard about. Students are afraid to come forward because of, the potential of what may happen if they expose the culprit to whom they think that's bullying them. Anybody else have any comments or concerns with this policy?
Mr. Chair, other than we will emphasize again that there is a definition of bullying that needs to be met. You made reference to that. Every incident is not a case of harassment or bullying. People believe that it is, but it has to meet that definition, which include over an extended period of time.
And Dr. Williamson, good point. Do we provide our principals and designee training to identify those areas? Or is that something that's just simply laid out in simple terms?
Yes, Bobby, you want to address that? That's part of our back to school meeting every year, that we have those conversations around discipline, around policy, around our matrix that help us determine. Bobby?
Yeah, so as well, bullying and harassing behavior is also addressed in our student code of conduct that is shared annually with all school administrators and is placed on our website for parents to review as well. So those definitions and descriptions of behaviors are included in that.
Okay. Any other discussion on policy 4329, 7311?
Mr. Henry.
Mr. Curry?
Dr. Williamson mentioned in the being able to meet the definition and on page 2, and I think this is sometimes what doesn't happen. You know, kids can say things to somebody one time, and that's not bullying. If you look up there at number one, the first thing it says, it's intended harm to another person, but it's characterized by repeated. Now, you don't want something to happen, but to be in the classification of bullying, it's got to be more than one time. I don't know how many the repeating is. That's where the principal has to investigate along with teachers or whoever, excuse me, to determine if something like this is continuous and ongoing. That's all.
Ms. Freeman?
Chairman Brewer, we also would like to add that it is also part of the mental health course that all staff are required to take. If that staff member interacts with a student in any particular way, there are some exclusions, but those who deliver instructional advantages to the students during the instructional day, they are required each year annually to either do a 2-hour course or 6-hour, depending upon when they actually entered the district. But each year we do have emphasis on that in the mental health course, and that was launched earlier in November 1st, and they have until April. So each year annually, we do have a cycle where bullying has been defined in there as it aligns with the policy.
Who identifies the students that have to get in that curriculum?
No, that's actually a staff course that is required through
Okay.
state law, through the
Gotcha.
mental health plan that we submit to the state board or the Department of Public Instruction each year annually.
Any other comments, questions? I hear a motion to accept or decline bullying and harassment behavior prohibited policy changes, 4329.
Make a motion to accept.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Use of unmanned aircraft drones. Policy 4334, 5035, 7345.
So, Mr. Chair, with this policy, it removes the requirement for the operator to have a permit. And to my knowledge, we have very few individuals that have requested to fly a drone at our school property. To my knowledge, it's only Mr. Till at certain events that we have that are doing the drone footage.
So, so this mostly pertain to like, a parent or somebody that wanted to fly a drone during a school activity or
Yes.
something? Okay. Any other comments, concerns about use of unmanned aircraft drone policy? I hear a recommendation.
Make a motion to accept policy as presented.
Motion made and seconded. Those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Ayes have it. Registered sex offenders, policy 5022. Looks like we have some recommended, overlapping recommended procedures that were made changes to in section A1, page 1 of 3. Also in the legal references. Anyone speak on this behalf of this policy?
So all that, Mr. Chair, all that has taken place here is they've updated all of the legal references as it relates to unregistered sex offenders.
Any questions or concerns?
I make a motion to accept policy 5022.
Second.
Those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Registered sex offenders policy 5022 recommendations changing. Policy 5026, 7250 smoking and tobacco products.
Mr. Chair, same thing as our previous policy
Right.
here. The only recommendation is to update the language to align with general statute of the definition of a tobacco product.
We hear a recommendation on that one.
Make a motion to accept policy as presented.
Second.
Those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Reporting to external agencies, policy 5150.
And so, Mr. Chair, if I may, in this policy here, this is an optional policy. This is not one that the board has to adopt. In reading this policy, I do believe that our practice is we are already doing all of these things. So again, this is not one that we have to adopt unless the board chooses to adopt, put it in writing that we do what we're already doing. As Dr. Wynn stated before, this is common practice for us.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed where, I think it was Wake County Schools got in trouble with some of this. Not reporting issues on time. So that's something that we probably don't have that much involvement with it, but still it's something we have to take serious. Any other comments, concerns with policy 5150, reporting to external agencies?
Well, it's best to do it up front instead of having questions later on when you
I
haven't
agree.
said nothing about it.
I
So,
agree.
and there's no changes or nothing here, and we've been doing it, so I'll make a motion that we accept 5150.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Student Health Services, policy 6120. Ms. Freeman, this your department.
Good morning again, Chairman Brewer. The only difference that we want to update with you and share with you with 6120 is on page 2 of 2. And that is where that annually we actually have the district mental health plan that we've had for numerous years now. And that there is a new requirement beginning next August 1st of 2025, that we review the plan annually every 5 years. Currently, we review it annually, and then we're to stay in accordance with what the State Board of Ed requires us to do.
Okay. You want to go ahead with student wellness? I think that would be overlapping a little bit in your department.
Yes, in policy 6140, the one difference that we want to make you aware of is page 1 of page 10 for our particular department is with the SHAC, which is the School Health Advisory Council. They currently do meet, and what we are looking that we need to work in conjunction with the school nutrition staff, but also be aware that they can provide additional updates to the policy, but we are to be cautioned that that group of individuals provide those recommendations based on needs as the district develops those needs or continuing needs.
Okay. Any other concerns or comments?
And also to add to Ms. Freeman and Dr. Dallas alluded to this earlier, on page 6 of 10 is where it makes reference to beginning with next school year that grades 9 through 12 must provide 60 minutes of physical activity weekly. And that is based upon state board policy.
Good point. And also on next page.
May I ask a question on that particular one? That's normally PE is a ninth grade requirement that covers that particular policy.
Bobby, let me ask you, when that sentence says that 9 through 12 must be provided 60 minutes weekly, the ninth grade PE take care of ninth grade. Now, is that saying though a 10th, 11th, 12th grader has to get that? And if it does, my question is how? Because they're in their classes, they're locked into their classes, there's no physical activity. So if that's including the other grades, how is that to be done? If I'm reading it like that.
Through the elective process, that's a concern, maybe weightlifting, some of the
Right.
other PE courses, but the requirement meets, obviously, if we keep it at grade 9, which is becoming a problem for us. to do that, but through those electives.
So it have to be you could have a kid that's, where they take ninth grade PE and then they might take weightlifting, but if they're not in weightlifting or not in PE again, because they're taking all core classes, or not, other than something like this, then they would not get what they're saying they need to get, say it's a 12th grader. Then, you know, that's the question I'm asking. Would that cause us an issue or a problem? You know, if they take, if they take PE, you know, ninth grade and take weightlifting for 3 years, they're covered. That's no problem. They're taken care of. But if we run into these kids they're not athletically inclined or don't want to be doing that, they'd rather be in a academic class, we could have an issue. I see it as a 10th, 11th, or 12th grader,
Right.
the way this is worded.
Again, that used to be a requirement in scheduling. I'm not sure now that we can require them to take PE. We have built the capacity though, because all of our 8th graders are now taking Math 1. And so the capacity for them to be able to take that PE, we have created for them to do that. But we'll take a look at that. Part of the concern is that definition of physical activity. Historically, in the past, it included a lot of activities that would cover that. So we'll do some research, but we understand that is a requirement that they have to, in 60 hours, for a semester. There's no question about that.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Any other comments or concerns? Maybe, maybe our sports programs fit in that. I hear a recommendation for policy 6140.
I make a motion, we accept 6140 as written now.
And 6120.
And 6120.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Federal Grant Administration, Policy 8305.
Good morning, everyone. The first change is minimal on page 2 of 6. It just rearranges the wording a bit. We have a non-competitive procurement process that follows purchasing records. Over on 3 of 6, we have our conflict of interest training. Mr. Jamal made sure we were taken care of there. Back in January, we completed that 2-hour requirement. That's part of the general statute 11 SC 335.15. So that covers us for conflict of interest for all staff members that deal with bidding, purchase orders, and quotes and whatnot here at the district level. On page 4 of 6, it simply changed the word from in a timely manner to credible evidence of the commission of a violation. So this is where Dr. Williamson would submit documentation essentially if a conflict of interest did happen to occur. And then the only other portion that I was addressing was on page 5 of 6, where it referenced training. We have our training for our new staff. Ms. Erica completed that from LBOS for folks that deal with our management system. And then, of course, at the bottom, the last part is E, reporting mismanagement. It essentially sums up that red paragraph at the bottom that no employee can be fired or discharged or any disciplinary action taken towards someone who is reporting a violation, essentially.
Any other comments or concerns? I hear a recommendation for policy 8305.
Make a motion to accept as presented.
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Policy 9125, participation by minority businesses.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, again, the change in language here again is just required by an updated definition to general statute.
Make a motion to accept policy 9125.
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Policy 9120 accepted. Extracurricular activities and student organizations, policy 3620.
And so, Mr. Chair, if I may, the changes here are just editorial changes on page 1 of 5, where they've included the word "and" and capitalized superintendent.
And it also covers homeschool students and early college students.
Motion to accept 3620 as presented.
Mr.
Second.
Chair, before we take a vote on that, Glenn, update us on homeschool kids participating, charter school kids participating, and then the High School Athletic Association attendance requirement that did change, correct?
Yes.
Good morning. With homeschool, we will allow homeschool kids to participate in extracurricular activities only if they are enrolled in our schools at least for half a day. Now, I want to be clear on this, as if you have to be homeschooled for 1 year before you will be eligible to participate in athletics. Just to give you an example, if a kid was homeschooled last semester, then they're not eligible for athletics this semester. They have to be homeschooled for 1 year prior to be able to participate in athletics. We are not allowing private charter school kids to participate in extracurricular activities. They have to be enrolled in our schools. Also, starting January, the North Carolina High School Athletic Association and the State Board of Education requires that our students attend and cannot miss more than 13 days per semester to be eligible to participate in extracurricular activities. So those were some of the rule changes. Also, to touch on it, the appeals committee, starting January, which is next semester, all attendance appeals will have to be appealed to the North Carolina High School Athletic Association. So we do not have that right locally to deal with any appeals as far as attendance.
How do you handle identifying a district that a homebound student resides in or be able to participate in?
The district they have to participate in is their assigned school district. Wherever address that's in that school district, that's where they will have to participate in. Now, of course, we do have the rule where out of district transfers, and that starts March. We have a window from March to April that they will have an opportunity to fill out the out of district form, and it has to be board approved in order for them to participate out of district.
Any idea how many students we got that's homebound? I'm not homebound, but they're doing homeschooling and they are participating. They're doing half of day at home and half of day at school, countywide.
I don't have that.
Okay, just wondering.
Mr. Bobby, do you have?
I'm not aware of any.
Still got, well, last year we had one that wanted to, and I just wondered, did we have any at all this time?
Not to my
Not
knowledge.
sure. Okay.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes, Ms. Patterson, can you address early college student participation, if they want to participate, the requirement, please?
Yes, sir. Starting this past year, starting 24, 25, early college students can participate in extracurricular activities as long as they participate at their home school. Okay, so that rule changed a little bit. In the past, they were able to go to, say if they were, give an example, they were in the Lumberton district and they wanted to participate at another school, they were able to do that. But starting this school year, 24, 25, that rule changed. So if an early college student is going to participate in extracurricular activity, they have to participate at their home school.
And that's statewide.
I can't speak on statewide, but I know here in our county that rule was
And
put
the
in place.
transfer policy also still in requirement also. I know we had some discussion before about an incident about transfer of a student.
If they do it within that window is March to April, then they can participate in any school in the county as long as it's board approved. Anything after that, then it has to be a bona fide move, which means that they have to move into the district in which they are going to participate in extracurricular activities.
Any other questions or concerns?
And Glenn, again, that's the first step, is to reside in the district. Second step is the sending or receiving superintendent. They have to sign off that they accept that student or will release that student, correct?
Yes, if we have a student coming from a different LEA, then that student has to be first released from the school that they are leaving from, and then the superintendent here will have to accept that student. That's if they coming from one LEA to the next LEA.
Any, Mr.
Yeah.
Craig?
One more question, and we've kind of taken care of this, but you can transfer one time, we had put in place a while back, as far as you couldn't transfer multiple times during the year and continue to play sports. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes.
You couldn't transfer, well, we got the window now, March is when you do it, you put it in, you can transfer. And in the past, when we allowed maybe transfers in September, that's when they would transfer and go to a school again. But now, since we put the window in, and I'm saying, asking, making sure it's in here, we got the window when you can transfer. That's in March.
Exactly.
Is there anything in here that says you can only transfer one time? Or do we need that in there anywhere, Mr. Bobby?
So the students who transfer section C, policy 4150 ties back to that transfer
That takes
policy.
care of that.
Within that policy, it says that the window is only open from March to April.
So that takes care of that
Yes.
part. Okay.
So the only situation that a child could possibly participate in two sports in the same year would be if they go back to that bona fide move that Mr. Patterson mentioned earlier.
Okay.
You heard a question for policy 3620.
Yeah, I make a motion that we approve 3620.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Policy 3620, extracurricular activities and student organizations. Carrie. Staff-student relations, policy 4040, 7310.
And Mr. Chair, here, this policy is updated in terms of state board policy and general statute. Those are the only changes made to this policy on page 404.
Mr. Jamal, any concerns or questions? Okay, I hear the question for policy 4040.
Make a motion, we accept 4040 and 7310.
All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Ayes have it. Dismissal or residence requirements, 4120. Policy.
So here again, Mr. Chair, the only revision is the updated link for the policies governing for students with disabilities handbook on page 5 of 5.
I make a motion, we accept 4120.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Policy carry. Goals for school nutrition services, policy 6200. Looks like a legal reference change.
Yes.
Any,
Motion to accept 6200.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Policy 6200 carries. Purchasing requirements for equipment, materials, and supplies, policy 6430.
Again, Mr. Chair, this is just a legal reference and it did not show up in color, but on page 7 of 7, you can see where that first line, they changed the 6 to a 7.
Okay.
Motion to accept policy 6430.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Policy 6430, purchase requirements accepted. We move on to policy 6450, purchase of services.
And Mr. Chair, that is the same reference. It's changed from 6 to 7.
Motion to accept policy 6450.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Policy carries. 6450. Licensure, policy 7130. It's like another legal reference. Any questions concerning a licensure?
And again, that is correct. It's on general statute and state board policy that has been updated there as well.
Do we have anybody attending with licensure? Okay.
Make a motion to accept 7130.
Any recommendations? Okay.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. 7130 licensure. All those opposed? All those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Policy 7650, employee travel and other expense reimbursement.
Mr. Chair, they've updated the link to the North Carolina Budget Manual. That is the change in this policy on page 3 of 4.
Any questions or concerns? I hear the question.
Make a motion to accept 7650.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Use and selection of architects, engineers, surveyors, construction managers at risk, policy 9110.
And Mr. Chair, again, this is one that did not show in color, but on page 3 of 3 is the same legal reference that has been updated in 2 previous policies, changing the 6 to a 7.
Any other questions or comments? Question?
Motion to accept policy 9110.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Emergency administration of naloxone, policy 5023, 6128, 7268. Ms. Jennifer, you? Yeah. Okay, I knew there was some discussion about some changes we were probably going to make with that. Also, Dr. Wilson, feel free to kick in.
I was gonna ask Cole, is Jan on? Okay. Gotcha.
And so just to lead in before Ms. Freeman gets started, this is the policy that was presented to us by the School Board Association This is just their generic policy as it relates to the administration of Narcan. Within it, although not explicitly stated within the policy, the district would then come up with their own practices and procedures. And I think that's where Ms. Freeman is going to talk about the work that Student Health Services has done. Ms. Freeman.
Good morning again, everyone. I'd like to bring your attention to Section A of the policy. With Section A of the policy, I would like to have you to look at the sentence that begins with the school nurse. The school nurse is responsible for monitoring the expiration dates of the schools, and I'll refer to this in layman's language, Narcan. And prior to the expiration date, also notifying the superintendent or designee of the need to procure a replacement. So what we have done with Student Health Services, we are in the process of developing, we've had a small team of nurses along with the larger group of nurses to have conversation. We've been in conjunction and working with surrounding districts that have policies already in place. Two of those surrounding districts happen to be Richmond as well as Scotland. We have aligned ourselves more closely with the Richmond policy and work more closely with Richmond because of where they are in the progression of the policy. With that being said, we've been able to work very closely with the local rescue unit here in the Robeson district. And we actually have training scheduled for January the 6th for our health services. That includes our nurses as well as our CNAs. Our goal is by the end of the month in January that we will have trained all identified first responders as well. Those first responders will include those designees that the principal determines at each site. Currently, we have a first responders team, and we're revisiting that first responders teams because actually in some of our schools, we have employees who are part of EMS part-time as well. So we will look at a revision of what those first responders may look like in accordance to if there are other individuals that could join us with that work. Also in Section A, you'll notice that it must be in a secured location. That conversation is occurring now. What does that mean in a secured location? With that being said, we will have to purchase an additional storage secure area. In consultation and talking with the nurses as well as Jan, the nurse supervisor, we have to have the Narcan very close in proximity with the AED as well as with the EpiPens. But they cannot be locked and it has to be in a secure location. That could bring some questions. However, we're very careful with how we, and the location of where we're going to put that. That determination has not been made yet. That will have to be made in consultation, of course, with the principals, as well as with those health services individuals and the first responders. So currently, we have looked at what that system may cost us. We've looked at a system for purchasing that. Right now, the primary unit cost that we have observed would be around $99 per unit. We've not finalized the company or quotes or any of that. We've just done general investigation on what it would cost to actually provide an additional storage unit. We want to be mindful that in the process of purchasing that and securing that we keep that out of the reach of student access, such as we do with the EpiPens. So that is part A of where we are in the policy process and where we are in terms of training. When we look down to Section B, we've talked about making sure that there's a list of trained employees that the school would be responsible for maintaining and how they would be authorized in administering the Narcan. The concern has been for us, I know we've been asked numerous times, why have nurses not been so closely involved? After lots of conversation with the state consultant as well as surrounding districts, with nurses, the Narcan is considered a medication. And with any medication, we have to have a prescription to administer. We have to be trained. We have to put that in place. So currently what we are waiting on, as well as the adoption of this policy, would be something called a standing order. With that standing order, we would be able to administer at any given time. Because they are a medical professional, they have to treat Narcan as a prescription drug. Meaning, yes, your SROs can administer in certain circumstances, just like with the nurses. However, we have to have that standing order. With that, we've been in consultation with the Robeson County Health Department. And with that, we're waiting response from them on will they be the unit that will administer the standing order for this district. It appears so, but we have not yet heard back from them. I did speak with Jan yesterday, and we did reach out again to the health department to find that out. In terms of how we will apply and the procedures for Narcan, we have consulted with several other districts, as well as there is a universal toolkit that we've actually pulled from as well. And we do have an administration protocol that is in draft form, and that would include the indications and the symptoms. And when you would administer Narcan, and making sure that we do administer that Narcan appropriately. I know there is no side effect that we're aware of Narcan once it is administered. But again, we want to be very clear with that administration protocol. We also have to have in process with that, we'll have to have a report of Narcan administration. We do have a draft document on how that looks as well. And then finally, the training guidelines for the Narcan administration. So all of these things currently are in draft form. We also have a sample memorandum of agreement that would go in conjunction with the local health department. That pretty much is consistent throughout the surrounding districts that have administered a policy thus far. It is, to my knowledge, that Richmond and Scotland and a few other surrounding counties around us, this is their first year of implementation. So what we've been doing is having consultation with them to refine any procedures that we may need to have. And so far, we've been able to put 4 documents together for draft purposes, or draft purpose.
Ms. Freeman, is this one kit per school or one kit per building? How?
The supply of Narcan, that's the conversation Jan and I had yesterday. What does an adequate supply of Narcan look like? What we have talked about is making sure that with those indications and with those symptoms of how you identify whether a person be in need of Narcan, you have to be trained to do that, because I talked with her yesterday, and in terms of how that looks, the person would have to be basically, we're saying the person would be unconscious or not responding. There's a lot of moving parts with that, but to go back to your original question, right now we're looking at 6 units of Narcan and the 8 in the storage unit. That's not clear yet on how many units we would have or how much Narcan we would have in each centralized location. For example, a school the size of Lumberton Senior High, you're going to have more Narcan available readily because of the number of students. So all of those factors are in consideration as we move forward. There's not been a final amount determined of how many Narcan administrations we would have available per site, but that is in consultation, and we have to be governed by the health department as well. So they're partly involved, or will be involved with all of that, based on all of the number of units that we would need or the number of Narcan substances that we would have to have on site.
I want to say, since we're at this point, Dr. Williamson, I want to say that I am very pleased in what I'm hearing. Our departments are ahead of times. They're on top of things. We're resourcing other LEAs, and also curriculum with state level. I think this is what it's going to continue for us to take to be premier in the state. You have any comments on use of Narcan?
No, just, I appreciate the work. That was a concern. We did have a request for an outside group to come in. We said no. The reason because of the work that your team was doing. And then our protection is only when we follow our policy. So if we allow an outside group to come in, something happened, we don't have any protection to do that. That's why we said no to that group. But they're moving ahead. It's impressive.
And for us, I would like to say I've had extensive conversation with Jan because my concern has been those indications and symptoms in the draft document that we've actually put together. So she and I have had extensive conversation because again, Narcan can be administered by anyone, but once you have a nurse doing that, the standing order and all the requirements that go with the nurse administering Narcan looks completely different in terms of the average person that would administer Narcan because they are a medical professional and they are held to licensure standards as well.
And Ms. Freeman, I know it's premature, but I think sharing our situation and where you're at with the school board, I think would be a beneficial and to the community. So they will understand that we're taking a proactive approach to learning more about the process and what all it encompasses, and that we're taking our time because we're making sure that we're following state guidelines, and we're having to put policy in place even for the administration piece of it. So you and Dr. Williamson, I would like to make a recommendation that you maybe put whatever briefing you'd like to put together for the board and the community to be aware.
Well, what we have, we do, and I have them with me, of course, because they're draft form, but we do have several documents. Again, the key for us is making sure too that we have that memorandum of agreement with the health department because we are governed by our health department. We work in tandem with them. So we will be glad to put that with the direction of the next board meeting. If that be the pleasure of the board, we will present that in terms, and we can provide that, but we'll make sure that we indicate that that is draft because we're still in revision. I know one of the conversations that I've had, because I'm very careful because I've had to serve in that role several times in the nursing role when the nurse supervisor has been out. And I want you to remember, if I could for just a moment, to remember our nurse supervisor in prayer. I just spoke with her yesterday. She's had some minor complications and setbacks. And so she was going to be online this morning, but she had to have a medical appointment this morning with some of those setbacks. So again, I would like to ask that we remember her as we move forward. But in going forward with that, we'll be glad to do whatever we need to do to move forward. We do recognize and understand that there is an opioid issue. I've looked at the stats through Robeson County for many months now. Been looking at it for probably about a year personally and have looked at those stats, and it is a growing need, not only unfortunately in Robeson County, it's a growing national need.
I think Robeson County on the chart is one of the highest in the state for Narcan. So therefore there was some monies, subsidies and grants put aside for the administration process of Narcan. It might be something that we can tap into also and get some resources for that, whether it be the medicine or whether it be monetary monies for training or whatever it takes. And I'll be glad to work with you and Dr. Williamson to reach out to whomever to try to help with that. Before we get too far into the discussion, do I hear the question on emergency administration?
I got a couple of
Mr.
questions.
Craig?
And Ms. Jennifer, thank you for all that, because we got to protect, we want to protect the children, but we got to protect ourselves. A couple of questions. Now, our nurses are going to get trained, our SROs are already trained. They can administer it. Was there a comment there that there's other people that might be on campus that would be able to administer this? Would they be involved in the training? That's my first question.
The first round of training will be the week of January 6th through the 10th, if my memory serves me correctly, and that will be to train the nurses as well as the CNAs. That is the first round because we want to make ensure that
That's
our
our people.
nurses are very clear, because they will actually be the responsible party for training other individuals, not our CNAs, but our nurses will be the responsible party that will use the training to then continue to train the remainder of those identified first responders identified by the principal. Currently, it could be the current list, it can be an additional add,
Okay.
but they will be trained by the end of January. If
Mhm.
all goes well, the goal is, if it goes as planned with the memorandum and the standing order, our goal would be, if policy is approved and passed, our goal would be to look at having that as close in place as we can, somewhere in the early months of maybe early February or sometime in March. Because again, we've got to get the supply, we've got to order the storage units, we've got to identify the location of where those units. So there's still a lot of ground
Mhm.
legwork to be done.
Well, then my final question is, which would be the final, I guess, putting this in place. We don't have SROs at every school. We don't have nurses at every school. Now, that's the reason I asked, are we training other people? Because conversations I had had with Miss Jane was, if people had to be moved around, if our nurses got trained, SROs are trained, I'd like to see where we have an SRO or nurse, as long as one of them's out of school. You follow what I'm saying? Somebody's trained on that campus. As long as we got at least one of those people out of school, somebody's trained. But then if we're getting other people trained at that school, that's extra people. And my whole comment of saying all of that is making sure we got somebody on that campus every day that could do this. And
Well-
and that part would be worked out with y'all and what
Yes.
has to be done.
Yes, sir. If you will notice in the proposed policy, Part B, the last sentence of that proposed policy says a list of trained employees should be maintained at the school,
Mhm.
meaning that we will have individuals,
Somebody.
because you cannot ensure that the SRO, Jan and I have had that conversation. I don't want to ensure that what if a nurse is out due to a medical concern or personal reason, or the SRO is not there? Situations, you and I have both been in leadership roles before at schools, and you have situations of that nature that can occur. However, if you have a list of trained individuals that are first responders, that are fully trained and understand,
You got
then
other
you will
people.
have someone on that campus. The key for me, as what I've shared with Jan, is making sure that those individuals that we have listed as trained are very clear on procedures, protocol, and format. Operations for me it's always been a key, and we want to make sure that they're 100% in alignment, and everyone on that list understands exactly what should be done, what they're looking for, whether they're a medical professional or not.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Jennifer, so what we're requesting today is approval of this policy with the understanding we're going to add practices to the policy and change practice as we learn more, correct?
Yes, sir. At this time, we have, again, looked at the kit, and we have pulled from the kit. I've also had consultation with our state health nurse. Many of you remember that was Stephanie Locklear, who was the previous nurse supervisor. She and I have actually had 3 to 4 conversations about this as well. So we're working in tandem with her. But yes, there will be adjustments as we go through. As with anything, there is an improvement process, and the cycle will continue.
Can we add to this, to make a recommendation to go ahead and order kits? I'm saying, yeah, we know we're gonna have to have so many, but like, we don't know how long it'll take. So could we go ahead and order, we're doing all this, order the kits. I'd hate to have the training. We got training done. It's February 29th, and we're waiting a month for kits.
We will
And
go.
so, yeah, I'd like to see them go ahead
Yes,
and
sir,
order.
we will. And as I said, that's why we looked at the cost of the storage units. For example, we know, but we've got to determine how many storage units per site, et cetera, where those will be. So I'll make sure that after this policy is put in place, our next step would be to operationally define where those locations, how many locations, how many storage units.
Well, Mr. Phillips is
cetera.
going to approve all of this, so this got no problem. We're ready to go. Right.
Well, that's a blessing, so thank you, I think, in advance.
Go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Phillips?
I know you said training from the 6th to the 10th. How many hour training is that per person? Just curious.
It's not. Actually, our conversation is the training can occur in around an approximate hour. That's my understanding, because for us, the intensity for us will be to look at the procedures that we're looking in place. So we're planning right now, a 9 to 12 session for 3 hours. We don't anticipate that it would take a 3-hour training session, but we do anticipate for our beginning health services, we want to have the opportunity like we're having here today, have question and answer. But what we've speculated, and again, it's a speculation based on recommendations of other districts, it appears it can be done in around, we were told 45 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and just round it up to an hour on those other individuals that would be trained.
So just for information for this committee, we are in alignment with local LEAs in this process. So it's not like we're behind.
No, we're in alignment with the needs. And from what I can understand, actually, we had questions that some of our adjoining counties, we asked them that they were like, we are in the process of refining that as well. Because again, it's the newness and it's a process of refining. For us, the most important aspect of it is making sure that we are medically sound in the protocols and the administration of how we go about doing this. It's simple, but again, from a medical professional point of view, they're wanting to make sure that everyone understands what those symptoms and indications would be of when you would pull that, so to speak, when you would use that Narcan.
Your question with additionals added.
Make a motion, we accept policy 5023, 6128, 7268, with additional parts added at a later time.
All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, Ms. Jennifer, Dr. Williamson, sound like you got another major task. And again, we appreciate everyone that showed up today, showed concern in the policies, our fall policy updates. And your participation is greatly needed for board members and for the communities to understand in clear detail what each policy consists of and all the fine arts of it. Any other comments, Dr. Williams?
Mr. Chair, if I may, the question in terms of dollar amount that we spent last year on computer repairs, I text Erica, she responded. Last year, we spent $368,000 in computer repairs.
Just from damages?
Just from damages, yes.
Wow.
That's a lot. That doesn't include the ones that were lost or not.
That's correct. That's just repairs
Repairing.
to keep them in use.
Just to meet that need.
That's correct.
Wow. Okay, Ms. Jennifer, I know this had nothing to do with policy, but do you think between your funding and Ms. Erica's, you can find the funds for the Narcan situation? I know that's going to be a question before the board once it comes before.
I can answer for federal funds. The answer will be no for us with the federal funding. But we actually have had conversation of how that will look. The answer, of course, will be yes. I can't answer exactly which funding source will provide, other than, unfortunately, I can't answer one, which would be the federal dollars. But yes, we'll work through that. And what we'll do at the next board meeting, I've just made several notes as we've been conversing. But what we'll do is we'll have actually, Mr. Craig, everyone, we'll have an implementation deadline. We'll have a rollout plan, really, because I think that's what I'm hearing you ask for as well,
Right.
is rollout. When is the effective rollout? Where will these storage units be, et cetera, and also a cost and the number of Narcans that we will have. I'm not sure I'm referring to it exactly correctly, but the, how many we will have in each of the storage units. And so we'll have an approximate amount. We'll have all of that as best as I can based upon the nurse team that I do work with in Jan's absence, as well as having conversation with her. I try not to, of course, in her medical
Right.
situation, rely too heavily on her, but we will definitely have that available. I'll start working on that today. Thank you.
Any other comments or concerns before we dismiss? Again, thank each and every one of you for coming and participating. Have a good evening.